Thump, thump, thump. The ground shook as the swamp roiled. Numerous enormous figures carried monstrous auras as they dashed over from all over. A savage ape monster the size of a mountain. A strange silver centipede with a myriad of enormous limbs. A phantom horse that was thin like a bamboo and had a human's face. Numerous cosmos beasts of all shapes and sizes broke the silent atmosphere in Blood Spirit Swamp and threw it into chaos. Everywhere they passed, they emanated aggressive auras that caused everything in the world to tremble. In next to no time, they arrived at their destination. The first scene that entered their vision was two immortal artifacts that were suffused with the blazing glow of treasures. They overflowed with flowing light as they floated silently above the swamp and emanated a glow that shot into the sky. High-rank, dark spirit, grade, immortal artifacts. The eyes of these cosmos beasts opened wide as they revealed a wisp of greed. They were captured from the universe by the experts of Tao Emperor Academy before being exiled at this blood spirit swamp for countless years. So they clearly understood the treasures of the immortal dimension and naturally understood the value of high-rank dark spirit grade immortal artifacts. To them, these immortal artifacts were definitely treasures that could only be chanced upon by luck. As for cosmic grade immortal artifacts, they seemed to be too far away from them instead. Even if such treasures appeared, they wouldn't have the chance to obtain it. Cosmic-grade immortal artifacts had appeared in the past, but they'd been divided up between the lords and kings of the cosmos beasts, and it had utterly nothing to do with them. What a treasure! A beast with the head of a cow and the body of a turtle had a heavy expression as he judged. The other beasts deeply agreed as well, and the greed in their gazes grew even brighter. However, they were still able to control themselves. After all, the appearance of those two treasures was slightly strange, so they had to take some precautions. It was just as they'd said before, the natives of the three dimensions were too cunning and full of tricks, so they had to take precautions. After that, they noticed that two figures were in fierce battle a few hundreds of km away, and it was a handsome young man and gorgeous woman. They didn't know the young man, yet they knew that he was definitely a native of the three dimensions. Whereas when they saw the woman, many beasts revealed a wisp of understanding as they recognized her. So it was Wei Na. Oh, I thought it was a trap set up by a native of the three dimensions. Now it would seem like I was overly suspicious. So in this way, it was Wei Na who sent out the distress signal earlier? This little girl isn't bad. She helped us trick and kill countless preys in the past. Now that I think about it, we seem to owe her slightly. Humph. There isn't anyone good in the illusory Demon Flower clan. They're lowly, crafty, and despicable. They're the shame of our sacred race. If it wasn't for her being slightly useful, I would have fucking killed a humiliation like her since a long time ago. The cosmos beasts discussed animatedly. Yet from the beginning until the end, their gazes stared fixedly at the two immortal artifacts, and the greedy in their eyes grew denser and denser. However, they were still slightly worried. In these past few thousands of years, they'd been tricked terribly by the natives of the three dimensions, and this deep and painful lesson that was taught in blood allowed them to learn how to be suspicious and vigilant. This scene was extremely magnificent. Not a single one of an entire 100+ cosmos beasts acted rashly, and if this scene was seen by an immortal, the immortal would surely feel extremely ashamed. They were such a group of disciplined beasts that remained unfazed even before precious treasures. Such ability was something even most immortals were unable to accomplish. Damn it! If all of you don't want these two immortal treasures, then they're mine. Finally, the beast with the head of a cow and body of a turtle wasn't able to restrain himself any longer, and he cursed in a low voice before stretching out his claw towards the two immortal artifacts with burning impatience. The other beasts didn't stop him, and they just stared fixedly at him. Ha! I'm fine. It isn't a trap. These two immortal artifacts are mine. After he grabbed smoothly onto the immortal artifacts, the beast with the head of a cow and body of a turtle couldn't help but be stunned. He was slightly surprised, and then he started roaring with laughter as he spoke with wild joy. The eyes of the other beasts opened wide and became red while they started breathing heavily when they saw this scene, and all of them became restless. What do you mean by they're yours? Stupid cow. Don't you know that everyone present deserves a share? A beast threatened fiercely in an icy cold tone. Exactly. All of us arrived here together, so how can it be monopolized by you? How about this? Allow me to safekeep these two immortal artifacts for now, and we'll deal with the ownership of these immortal artifacts after we deal with that native of the three dimensions. The savage ape monster that was the size of a mountain spoke with a gruff voice. The beast with the head of a cow and body of a turtle roared furiously when he heard this. These are mine. Mine. All of you cowardly fellows were terrified to the point of not daring to stretch out your hands earlier, yet you're trying to seize my fucking treasures instead. All of you are simply more despicable than the natives of the three dimensions. The other beasts chuckled with ridicule and directly disregarded his roars. Look quickly. That kid actually intends to flee, said a beast abruptly. Damn it. I'll go capture him. All of you wait for a moment. The eyes of the beast with the head of a cow spun about in their sockets before he roared with rage. And then he charged over. Tui, stupid cow. Do you think we don't know your intentions? That kid definitely has more treasures in his possession. Could it be that you still intend to seize a few more? How insatiably greedy. Kill. Everyone attack together. The treasures belong to the one that kills that kid. Instantly, all the cosmos beasts were unable to restrain themselves any longer and charged towards the distant Xianxia. They seemed hungry and thirsty, as if they'd taken Xianxia to be food on their plate. Damn it! Don't fight with me! Hey! You actually dared to trip me! Bastard! Don't block my path! Are you courting death? The scene was in chaos. Over 100 cosmos beasts moved out in unison while striving to be the first, and not a single one of them was willing to be a step slower than the other. It was a rather magnificent scene. Strength came in numbers. At this moment, they weren't worried about anything else, because how could there not be any danger when fighting for treasures? At most, some of them would die, and it was fine so long as they themselves didn't die. This sort of attitude, like that of the willingness to sacrifice others in order to benefit oneself. They've come. Wei Na fought Xianxia while speaking via voice transmission. Even if she was clearly aware that Xianxia had set up a grand formation, she was still anxious to the point her heart rose to her throat when she saw the dense mass of cosmos beasts that covered the heavens and the earth. Xianxia said swiftly, "Wait a bit more. Only less than half have entered the grand formation now." Wei Na bit her lips and was just about to say something when the phantom horse had charged over. "Little sister Wei Na, don't be afraid. I'll help you kill your enemy." Amidst a wave of strange laughter, the phantom horse kicked out with its legs. Its legs were like two iron poles that carried a fierce and metallic sheen as it stomped down fiercely at Xianxia. Bang! Xianxia feigned inferiority and staggered back. The phantom horse became even more complacent when he saw this, and he licked his scarlet-red lips as he cried out excitedly while continuing his attack towards Xianxia. "Little fellow, quickly hand over your treasures, and I'll immediately turn around and leave." Xianxia remained silent while he glanced at the surroundings out of the corner of his eyes, and he noticed that around 10+ beasts hadn't entered into the boundary of the grand formation yet. However, right when he intended to wait for a moment longer, he suddenly heard Wei Na's sharp and terrified cry. It turned out that some beasts had already surrounded Wei Na at this moment. "Little bitch, you've seized a great deal of treasures already, right? Quickly hand it the fuck over." These words were spoken murderously. Xianxia hadn't expected that these cosmos beasts would actually make a move against Wei Na at this moment. He didn't dare think any further, and his body suddenly surged with a blazing divine glow as he stomped in midair and emanated a resounding sound. Huff! Bang! This ancient sound was like a thunderclap from the 9 heavens, and it shook the cosmos beasts to the point their minds became slightly dazed. At the same time, a terrifying and horrifying aura suddenly surged out from an area of 50 kilometers in the surroundings. What? Before the cosmos beasts could figure out what had occurred, they saw the scene before their eyes change, and then they suddenly saw countless dazzling bolts of silver lightning striking down from all directions. Rumble! A myriad of bolts of lightning converged together and were suffused with a frightening aura that seemed to desire the annihilation of all evil and the decimation of the world. Countless resplendent bolts of silver lightning zigzagged and fluttered through the sky as they filled the sky to the point it seemed as if the end of the world had arrived. The minor thunderclap devil break slaughter formation. Damn it! We've been tricked. How despicable. What a despicable native of the 3 dimensions. I'll fucking kill you. Wei Na, you stinking bitch. You're actually working together with a native of the 3 dimensions to trap and kill us. You're dead. You're dead. Damn it. I was so fucking careful. Yet I actually fell into a trap once again. A wave of terrified and furious howls resounded. But in next to no time, it was drowned out by the rumbling and heaven-shaking sounds of thunder, causing only their shrill and miserable cries before death to be heard from time to time. Xianxia and Wei Na stood side by side at the foundation of the grand formation at the center of the formation. When they looked out from here, their surroundings were filled with an ocean of thunderstorms, and the heavens and the earth were filled with lightning. Cosmos beast after cosmos beast was struck to death, and they were utterly incapable of avoiding or escaping the formation and its attacks. Wei Na suddenly covered her face while her entire body trembled without end. She frowned. What's wrong? That scene is too beautiful. I don't dare to continue laying eyes on it. Wei Na spoke softly with a similarly trembling voice, yet she wasn't sad, but delighted instead. She was slightly speechless. She seems to be even more happy than I am. But in next to no time, he couldn't be bothered about this because he noticed that the star points within his violet ribbon star crest was rising at an alarming speed. 600. 700. 800. This insane speed caused Xianxia to be extremely excited. He'd already entered the Bloodlands for an entire day, yet he was only starting to obtain star points at this moment. But he never expected that he would obtain star points in such an insane method. It was simply not like earning star points but like sweeping them up. When the last cosmos beast within the grand formation was annihilated, the star points within Xianxia's violet ribbon star crest had already increased from the 513 he originally possessed to 1,030 star points. It had increased explosively by an entire 517 star points. All of this had occurred in a mere moment. Unfortunately, the last 10+ cosmos beasts weren't able to enter the grand formation, otherwise my star points would at least increase by another 60 or 70. Xianxia took a deep breath as he restrained the excitement in his heart, and he puckered his lips with slight regret. In the next moment he stopped thinking about all of this. He flashed into the grand formation and started gathering the spoils. These cosmos beasts mostly possessed cultivations at the mysterious immortal realm, and they could be said to be covered in treasures. Their bones, tendons, horns, and so on and so forth were all precious immortal materials. At the same time that Xianxia utilized the minor thunderclap devil break slaughter formation to kill over 100 cosmos beasts, violent battles were going on throughout the Bloodlands. Jinlu, who wore a moon-yellow-colored monk robes, had a golden lotus pattern on his forehead, and possessed an extraordinary and tranquil bearing sat cross-legged within an expanse of surging baleful mist. His expression was solemn as he chanted Buddhist scriptures, and his entire body emanated boundless light that illuminated the heavens and the earth. There were around 20 Buddhist disciples that stood silently in Jinlu's surroundings. They held wooden clappers, prayer beads, green lanterns, scriptures, books, ship eyes, bells. All of them were suffused with the glow of the Buddha, and they revealed compassionate expressions. At this moment, flowers fell from the sky while golden lotuses surged up from the ground, and the entire world was boundlessly illuminated by the golden glow of the Buddha. It illuminated the heavens and the earth, and it dispelled the dark baleful mist in 5,000 kilometers in the surroundings. Within the air, only the grand forces of tranquility, peacefulness, and order were spreading. On this day, the baleful mist mountains at the northwest area of the Bloodlands were purified by the glow of the Buddha. The 1,000+ Xeno-race experts and 7 Lord-level experts that resided here were crushed by the boundless glow of the Buddha. Jinlu and all the other top disciples of the Buddha dimension obtained 600 star points each. At Splitstream Icefield, snow that was piercingly cold like blades raged throughout the heavens and earth, and it drowned the world and transformed it into a world of ice. Bang! Amidst this adverse weather that was capable of instantly freezing a heavenly immortal realm expert to death, a mighty figure was walking over. Every single step the figure took erupted with the rumbling of thunder. It was the Ji clan's Ji Xianbing. He wore loose garments with a girdle, and he possessed a tall and imposing figure and broad shoulders. Even the raging snow in the ice field were unable to cover up the lofty and noble aura of supremacy he emanated. Bang! 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 He had his hands behind his back as he looked towards the distance while walking forward with large strides. He remained indifferent towards everything in the surroundings, yet everywhere he passed, the Cosmos Beast's figure exploded open before they transformed into powder. They were like pieces of paper that didn't have the slightest ability to resist. How many? Ji Xianbing only turned around after he walked to the end of Splitstream Icefield, and he asked indifferently. 537, answered the expert of the Ji clan's younger generation that followed behind him. That's not enough. Ji Xianbing frowned. Continue. On a plane that was covered in bones. A true phoenix that possessed gorgeous wings, a noble appearance, and suffused with a supreme aura fluttered about in midair. The cries of the phoenix shook the 9 heavens. Strands of translucent true phoenix blaze drifted down like a heavy downpour, and it completely enveloped the plane. The flames were like a roiling ocean that covered the sky, blotted out the sun, and burned the heavens. When looked at from afar, the plane covered in bones that went on for practically a few tens of thousands of kilometers was filled by boundless flames. It was like a kingdom of flames, whereas the true phoenix was the emperor of flames that looked down upon the world. On this day, Zhao Mingli led the disciples of the Phoenix clan to annihilate the 800 skeleton beasts and the 6 lords of Skeleton Plain, and they each obtained 500 star points. In the numerous areas within the Bloodlands, countless experts were fighting bravely, and they made every second count as they earned star points. Amidst the raging flames of war, the experts that revealed the most outstanding display were naturally the disciples from the 7 great ancient clans: the Buddha Dimension, Dragon Dimension, Phoenix Clan, and other top powers. It wasn't that the dangers in the Bloodlands were too weak, and it was instead because they were fighting in a group and possessed a great deal of information about the situation within the Bloodlands, so they naturally swept through everything before them. On the other hand, the other disciples participating in the test were mostly in dangerous situations. They were frequently hunted by Cosmos Beasts, captured by Xenorace experts, or suffered sneak attacks from other participants of the test. Even if it was those disciples that still hadn't been eliminated from the test, the amount of star points they'd earned couldn't compare with those disciples from top powers at all. Under such circumstances, Chun Shi's act of annihilating over 100 Cosmos Beasts in one go to obtain 517 star points didn't draw any attention. It was even to the extent that his ranking on the floating wall of light in the outside world had dropped by a few positions instead, and he was ranked at the 15th. This obviously showed how cruel the competition in the second round of the test was. It wasn't just a battle with the Cosmos Beasts and Xenorace, they even had to be vigilant against suffering sneak attacks from the other participants of the test. Not only did they have to fight amidst the adverse environment of the Bloodlands, they even had to make every second count as they earned star points. All in all, this was a test without any order, and this caused it to seem brutal. Most importantly, this was merely the beginning of the test, and along with the passage of time, the situation within the Bloodlands would only become more and more dangerous. After he cleaned up the battlefield, Chun Shi obtained a small mountain worth of various immortal materials. But they were mostly mid-stage immortal materials, and they couldn't even compare in value to the immortal materials within Machi Long's storage pouch. Moreover, he noticed that the wealth in the possession of these Cosmos Beasts was few indeed. Besides a few immortal artifacts and the immortal materials that they gathered, there was nothing else to plunder from these Cosmos Beasts. However, Chun Shi was already very satisfied. He wasn't gathering immortal materials because he coveted wealth, and it was instead for the sake of refining grand formations, so that he could repeat the same method to hunt his prey. In this way, he would be meeting the enemy in his own territory, and he would be able to earn shocking amounts of star points. Most importantly, he didn't have to worry about any danger. The only troublesome thing was how he should draw the beasts over to enter his trap. The hunt from before had succeeded because he possessed Wei Na's help. However, this method couldn't be used again because over 10 cosmos beasts had fled earlier. Now, they'd probably spread the news out long ago. If I really can't succeed, then I can only go to a different place. She pondered deeply before he glanced at the minor thunderclap devil break slaughter formation. This grand formation had merely emanated half of its might during the slaughter earlier. In other words, so long as he repaired it once more, it could be reused. However, out of consideration for the situation he was in at this moment, it couldn't be utilized again within Blood Spirit Swamp. The reason was extremely simple. The cosmos beasts within Blood Spirit Swamp had almost been completely annihilated by Shi, so he would be utterly unable to earn any more star points if he continued waiting here. Rumble! A wave of world-shaking footsteps suddenly sounded out from the distance, and it faintly carried the fierce roars of numerous beasts as it approached with a rather vast impetus. Shi's brows raised. What's going on? Shit. Lord Nine Spirits is charging over with all his subordinates. Wei Na's entire rabbit body trembled, and her eyes revealed terror. Only now did Shi recall that Wei Na was able to understand what those cosmos beasts were saying. How many are there? Shi was delighted in his head as he asked. He was just worried about whether he should move to another area to hunt cosmos beasts. Yet he never expected that these cosmos beasts would actually come to him. Around 200. No, wait. These are only the subordinates of Lord Nine Spirits, and there are also the subordinates of other lords. My God! Could it be that all the lords of the southeast area have moved out? Wei Na listened attentively to the fierce howls in the distance while she spoke with a stutter. The terror in her voice grew thicker and thicker while her entire body shivered violently without end. The pleasant surprise within Shi's heart reduced greatly when he heard this, and his eyes narrowed slightly and focused towards the distance. This situation is slightly unusual. How could they possibly deploy such a vast array of forces to deal with just me alone? Could it be that they have other objectives? Shi's brows knit together as he discarded all the distracting thoughts in his head. He knew that he couldn't waste any more time. If he wasn't wrong, then the vast army of cosmos beasts would arrive here in 10 minutes. At this moment, the important matter at hand was to first repair the minor thunderclap devil break formation. They've suddenly stopped. They seemed to be waiting for the arrival of a great figure. Wei Na spoke once more, and she was anxious, terrified, and uneasy. A great figure? Shi, who was just about to get to work, frowned, and he said swiftly, "Are you able to discern who it is?" Wei Na took a few deep breaths repeatedly before perking up her ears, and she listened with focus for a short moment before she cried out involuntarily, "Whitetail! It's Whitetail King!" No wonder so many lords moved out. It was Whitetail King that gave the order. She was aware that Whitetail King was an extremely formidable cosmos beast within the southeast area of the Bloodlands, and his strength was comparable to existences in the top 10 positions of the Ascension Immortal rankings. Moreover, Whitetail King possessed a few thousands of cosmos beasts under his command and rules over the area. Are you able to find out their objective? She had an even deeper feeling that this scene before his eyes was too strange. They seemed to intend to capture a native of the 3 dimensions called Shi. It seems to not be related to us. Wei Na replied very quickly this time, and she seemed to heave a sigh of relief as she spoke, because she didn't know that the young man before her eyes was called Shi. Shi's gaze suddenly flashed with a wisp of a piercingly cold sheen when he heard this. They actually know my name. Obviously, someone told it to them. Is it the Wuxia clan? They actually didn't hesitate to take the risk of violating the taboo of the 3 dimensions and cooperating with cosmos beasts just to kill me. She took a deep breath as boiling killing intent surged from his heart. He originally intended to lie low temporarily if he was unable to go against the entire force of the Wuxia clan before taking them out once by one. But now he wasn't willing to avoid them anymore, and he intended to play with them. Without the slightest hesitation, she started to repair the minor thunderclap devil break slaughter formation, and he swiftly asked Wei Na as he repaired it. In the tests of the past, Would you cosmos beasts cooperate with us disciples that participating in the test? Wei Na shook her head with wonder. I don't know. She frowned and stopped asking any further questions while concentrating in the repair of the grand formation. Wei Na was at most a subordinate of Lord Nine Spirits, her status was too low, and she was obviously unable to come into contact with such secrets. At the same time, another vast group of beasts flew over towards them in the distant sky above Blood Spirit Swamp. They were around 1,000 in number, and there was a bronze treasured carriage at the center of the group. Within the treasured carriage was a white-haired old man with silver pupils and an irritable expression sitting cross-legged there. This old man was shockingly the overlord in this southeast area of the Bloodlands, Whitetail King. On the other hand, there was a man and woman standing at the side of the bronze treasured carriage, and it was Zhang Zhulu and Yin Miao Miao. Swoosh! A cosmos beast that seemed like an owl flew over and arrived before the bronze treasured carriage in a flash. And then it said, My king, 5 lords and the subordinates under their command have gathered at Blood Spirit Swamp now, and they're awaiting my king's arrival. Zhang Zhulu and Yin Miao Miao raised their heads in unison, and they saw that over 1,000 cosmos beasts were already waiting at the blood-colored swamp in the distance since a long time ago. They were like a black mass of tidewater that emanated a monstrous and fierce, imposing aura. 5 lords that are equivalent to experts in the top 300 of the Ascension Immortal rankings, 2,000 cosmos beasts equivalent to mysterious immortal realm experts, and 1 whitetail king that can rival an expert in the top 10 of the Ascension Immortal rankings. It would be a miracle if such a force is unable to kill Xianxia. Zhang Zhulio's spirits were raised when he saw this, and he said swiftly via voice transmission, Alas, it's a pity that if we're able to hunt and kill Whitetail King and these subordinates of his, then would we have to worry about being unable to ascend into the top 10 ranks in terms of star points? Yin Miao Miao puckered her lips and said, Earning star points will be a breeze once we converge with the disciples of the Wuxia clan. The important matter at hand is to eliminate Xianxia first. As they spoke, Whitetail King had already walked out from within the bronze treasured carriage, and he stood before the vast army with his hands behind his back. Greetings, my king. 5 figures with monstrous auras flew over before bending down to a knee. They were the 5 lords subordinate to Whitetail King, and all of them had taken human form. Greetings, my king. In the next moment, the almost 2,000 cosmos beasts present here spoke in unison and in an orderly manner, and their imposing aura shook the 9 heavens. Zhang Zhulu and Yin Miao Miao were both shocked by this scene, and they didn't dare underestimate Whitetail King, who was in human form before them. Both of them were very clearly aware that if it wasn't for their relationship with the Wuxia clan, they would have probably been torn into pieces by the vast army before them. Whitetail King waved his hand and said, 9 spirits, this is your territory. Is the target I asked you to find here? A black-robed man hesitated for a moment before he bowed and said, My king, the target is at the area 1,500 kilometers from here. Presently, I and the other 4 lords have already sealed up the Blood Spirit Swamp, so it's impossible for the target to escape. Whitetail King nodded, and then his gaze inadvertently swept the surrounding army before he suddenly frowned and said, Could it be that all your subordinates aren't here? Lord Nine Spirit's heart shook, and he knew he was unable to conceal it any longer. So he immediately spoke about the incident from before. He killed almost 100 of your subordinates by setting up a grand formation? A wisp of bright light flashed within Whitetail King's eyes, and he was slightly surprised. Everyone else, including Yin Miao Miao and Zhang Zhulu, were surprised. 9 spirits summoned up the courage to answer bitterly. They were too greedy and fell to that native of the 3 dimensions trap. If they could have been a little bit more careful, then such a great loss wouldn't have occurred. The more he spoke, the weaker his voice became, and he seemed to be slightly lacking in confidence. Whitetail King's brows knit together to form 3 lines, and then he said, Could it be that he's a talisman formation grandmaster? When she saw Whitetail King was slightly hesitating to act, Yin Miao Miao suddenly said, I can help you break open the formation. Whitetail King glanced doubtfully at Yin Miao Miao. What? You don't believe her? Miao Miao is from an ancient clan renowned in the Tao of talismans, the Yin clan. She's also an outstanding talisman formation grandmaster. Jiang Zhulu grunted coldly from the side. Whitetail King's expression eased up when he heard this, and then he said while seeming to be not quite convinced, "All right, I'll believe you this time." As he spoke, he waved his hand and said to the 5 lords, "Set out. Capture the target." Woo, woo. Waves of fierce roars resounded as the vast beast army transformed into a surging black cloud that covered the heavens and the earth as it charged towards the depths of Blood Spirit Swamp. OM. A wisp of bright light blinked in an area of 50 kilometers from the pitch-black rock as the center, and then it vanished without a trace. But during that instant, a terrifying aura that terrified the soul surged into appearance, and it caused the heavens and the earth in the entire Blood Spirit Swamp to tremble. Xianxia finally heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. His countenance was slightly pale while a wisp of exhaustion was present between his brows, and it was impossible to be eliminated in a short period of time. I never expected that the major thunderclap Devilbreak Slaughter formation already possessed the ability to form a link with the might of the gods of the heavens and the earth. Xianxia felt fortunate in his heart. Earlier, he'd exerted all his might and practically exhausted all the immortal materials in his possession. And not only had he repaired the minor thunderclap Devilbreak Slaughter formation, he'd even refined and set it up once more in the form of the major thunderclap Devilbreak Slaughter formation. However, to his surprise, at the final moment, he almost suffered backlash and caused the entire grand formation to be destroyed because his Tao of Talismans was still unable to link up with the gods of the heavens and the earth. Fortunately, he was able to stabilize the formation with Dark Lightning Divine Talisman in the end. The only flaw was that because this grand formation didn't possess might of the gods of the heavens and the earth, its might was greatly reduced. However, even then, even if it was unable to kill an existence at the Golden Immortal realm, it was capable of easily trapping a Golden Immortal for a short period of time. As for a mysterious Immortal realm expert, unless it was an existence at the level of Jinlu Ji Shenbing and Zhao Mingli, otherwise being trapped in the formation meant certain death. Xianxia took a few deep breaths. With the assistance of the dark parasol sapling, the immortal force that he'd completely exhausted was recovering swiftly, and it didn't affect his ability to do battle. Earlier. The nearby Wei Na that had transformed into a white rabbit spoke with a stutter. Xianxia felt helpless and felt that this woman was really cowardly. He sat casually on a rock and said, "Speak frankly." "Oh." Wei Na nodded, and then she said hurriedly, "Earlier, I heard that there seems to be a talisman formation grandmaster called Miao Miao, and she said she'll break the formation open." Xianxia's eyes narrowed. Sure enough, Whitetail was really instructed by the Wuxia clan to deploy so many cosmos beasts here, and Jiang Zhulu and Yin Miao Miao are probably amongst them. Why don't we flee?" Wei Na asked weakly. Xianxia knew that Wei Na was worried of the unimaginable consequences from being captured by Lord Nine Spirits. "Don't worry. This formation is my absolute territory, and none of them can hope to break it open." As he finished speaking, his tone carried confidence and arrogance because the Tao of Talismans was the field that he was most skilled in. Wei Na seemed to have been affected by the confidence in Xianxia's voice, and she actually became much quieter and wasn't terrified, uneasy, and shivering like she was before. After that, she suddenly realized something and cried out with surprise. "So you're that Xianxia?" Xianxia glanced at her and was slightly speechless. This woman is clearly extremely intelligent, yet she frequently acts stupid. Why has she only guessed my identity now? But right after that, he couldn't be bothered to think about all of this because the dark cloud in the distance was surging over from extremely far away. Shockingly, it was a dark cloud formed from numerous cosmos beasts. Xianxia stood up and said, "Wait here and don't go anywhere." His green clothes and long hair fluttered as he spoke, and then his white and slender hands flashed about swiftly to form a profound and obscure seal. After that, his arms suddenly spread open as if he was embracing the world. Bang! At this instant, a myriad of dazzling thunderstorms rained down from midair within an area of 50 kilometers. The thunderbolts transformed into crimson, gold, green, silver, and black bolts of lightning that zigzagged about white emanated resplendent light. and all of them were suffused with a terrifying aura that horrified the soul. Lightning was represented by the trigram of Zhen. Amongst the numerous grand Tao laws, the Tao of lightning was the top in terms of possessing an aura of slaughter and might. It was precisely because of this that all the tribulation of the world descended in the form of lightning, and it represented the most merciless, terrifying, and upright side of the heaven Tao. Wei Na was instantly stunned. She stood alone beneath the myriad of bolts of lightning. His arms were spread into the air while his tall figure was bathed beneath the layer upon layer of lightning. He was like an emperor of lightning that stood high above in the world, and time and space seemed to have frozen at this moment. This scene was bound to be branded into the depths of Wei Na's memory, and it would be impossible to eliminate forever. Rumble. The sound of thunder danced through the sky like the roars of fiend gods, and the vast beast army that flew over was terrified to the point of going pale and stopped on the spot when faced with such a sight. Whitetail King stopped abruptly as well. His gaze flickered repeatedly as he stared for a long time at the grand formation in the distance that surged with thunderstorms, and then he turned to look at the nearby In Miao Miao. "Aren't you a talisman formation grandmaster? Go! Break that grand formation open." Whitetail King pointed to the distant grand formation with a murderous expression that revealed a trace of anger. In Miao Miao answered without the slightest hesitation. "All right, but I need some assistance." Whitetail King slightly believed her ability instead when he saw that she was calm and composed, and his expression eased up before he said, "I'll agree to anything so long as you're able to deal with it." In Miao Miao flew up. Her clothes fluttered while her gaze was deep, and she gazed at the surroundings of the grand formation for a long time. When everyone was slightly impatient from waiting, she said, "If I'm not wrong, this grand formation is called the Major Thunderclap Devilbreak Slaughter Formation, and it's sufficient to trap and kill a golden immortal." A golden immortal! Everyone was shocked as soon as these words were spoken. They were at most at the mysterious immortal realm, and even Whitetail King hadn't attained the golden immortal realm. Even though he possessed an army of almost 2,000, it would definitely suffer extremely heavy losses if they were to enter this grand formation. Whitetail King's pupils constricted, but he seemed to be much more composed, and he said in a low voice, "Can you deal with it?" In Miao Miao nodded and said, "This grand formation isn't complete. It hasn't formed a link with the might of the gods of the heavens and the earth, so its might is much weaker. But even then, it's still slightly troublesome to break open this formation." Everyone present here heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts when they heard this. "I need 320 assistants," In Miao Miao said frankly. "This grand formation is extremely troublesome, and it has to be broken open from different positions at the same time. So I need them to carry out my orders at the first possible moment when breaking open the formation." Whitetail King turned around and said to Lord Nine Spirits when he heard this, "Bring your subordinates along and listen to the instructions of this girl." His voice was indifferent yet carried an indisputable tone. Nine Spirits' heart shook, and he didn't dare refuse. He immediately led his row upon row of guards to stand before In Miao Miao and listen to her orders. This grand formation's foundation is based on the form of the 9 palaces. The center palace is the core of the formation. Form groups of 60 and wait at the various other positions of the 9 palaces. In Miao Miao acted immediately and without the slightest hesitation. Her tone and actions naturally carried a well-planned bearing, and it caused Whitetail King and the other cosmos beasts to be much more at ease. In next to no time, Lord Nine Spirits' subordinates had moved according to In Miao Miao's instructions and were distributed on the positions of the 9 palaces that lay outside the grand formation. The position of Can, forward 3 steps, back 2 steps, destroy the blue-colored lightning. The position of Zhen, attack the ground 21 m away with all your might. The position of Zhen, take defensive positions and destroy any lightning you encounter. Make the grand formation unable to circulate. In Miao Miao took a deep breath when she saw this scene, and then her gaze became cold and calm like snow before she issued instruction after instruction. Due to speaking being too slow, she directly utilized her immortal sense to send voice transmissions, and 8 different commands were completely sent out in practically an instant. As soon as she finished speaking, The cosmos beasts that had been divided into 8 groups that stood at different positions around the Grand Formation shouted in unison before attacking the Grand Formation with all their might. Bang! 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 The entire major thunderclap devil break slaughter formation surrounding suddenly emanated waves of explosions and quaking that shook the heavens and the earth, and it caused the entire Grand Formation to shake violently. Not bad, not bad. Whitetail King's expression became even more relaxed when he saw this. He was able to clearly notice that the energy of the distant Grand Formation was undergoing intense fluctuation, and it wouldn't be long before the Grand Formation would collapse and shatter into pieces. The nearby Jiang Zhulu grunted coldly. It isn't just not bad. If it was any other Talisman Formation Grandmaster here, then that person would probably be unable to achieve such perfection like Miao Miao. Whitetail King glanced at Jiang Zhulu, yet didn't say anything. Kuan position, Sun position, and Dui position hear my command. Attack at full force. You must fight your way 3 kilometers into the formation. Qian position hear my command. Quickly withdraw from the formation and join forces with the Can position in defense. All other positions. Continue standing your ground and destroy the lightning in the surroundings. Miao Miao remained indifferent towards everything in the surroundings while her immortal senses enveloped the entire area, and it locked firmly onto every single change in the entire Grand Formation. Then she issued orders according to the varying situations. If one looked down from the sky, one would notice that the major thunderclap devil break slaughter formation that covered an area of 50k was shrinking without end. The edges of the Grand Formation were even collapsing successively. This sort of change instantly caused the morale of the beast army to rise, and then they revealed fierce and savage expressions as they rubbed their fists together while itching for action. Whitetail King nodded to himself while an absurd thought couldn't help but arise in his heart. If my cosmos sacred race possesses numerous Talisman Formation Grandmasters, then it would have probably killed its way into the 3 dimensions, right? Whitetail King, I need 1,000 experts to stand on guard at the collapsing areas of the outer ring of the Grand Formation. Swiftly. Otherwise, the advantage we've gained will be lost. Right at this moment, Miao Miao's voice sounded out from midair. Whitetail King's face turned solemn as he immediately ordered the other 3 lords and said, Greenwing, Winterway, Safaredu. Lead your subordinates and listen to Miss Miao Miao's orders. Yes. The 3 Cosmos Beast Lords led their respective subordinates and flew over in a vast array. In this way, besides Whitetail King, only around 600 Cosmos Beasts hadn't been deployed. Nice! That kid thought he'll be able to be safe and sound by setting up the Grand Formation. Yet how could he have imagined that he would encounter Miao Miao and me here? He deserves to suffer such misfortune. The nearby Jiang Zhulu couldn't help but be extremely excited when he saw the situation was so good. Rumble! Rumble! Along with Miao Miao commanding the Cosmos Beast army to break open the Grand Formation, the fluctuation of the major thunderclap devil break slaughter formation grew more and more violent, and it showed signs of collapsing from outside in. We're finished. The Grand Formation is about to be broken open. What should we do now? At the center of the Grand Formation where the core of the formation lay, Wei Na watched the beast army that pressed down step by step from all directions, and she was both anxious and terrified. She turned around to look at Chen, she yet saw him sitting cross-legged on the rock with a ramrod-straight posture, and he had his eyes closed while revealing a calm expression. He seemed to be completely unaware of everything occurring in the surroundings. Could it be that you're not afraid? Wei Na couldn't restrain the terror in her heart any longer, and she asked Chen Shi with a trembling voice. It's already come to a time like this. Yet how can you still sit there calmly? Chen Shi opened his eyes and glanced at Wei Na before he said, Have they injured you? Wei Na was stunned as she said, No, Chen, she said. Then what are you afraid of? Wei Na was instantly filled with worry. She stretched out her paw to point outside the Grand Formation before she said anxiously, But they're about to arrive here. Chen Shi closed his eyes once more. You'll understand soon. Wei Na was stunned. Soon? I'll be dead soon. What would I be able to understand then? She opened her mouth with the intention of saying something, yet she instantly became extremely discouraged when she saw Chen Shi had already closed his eyes. She squatted on the ground while looking anxiously towards the area outside the Grand Formation, and she was both terrified and worried. Just like this, she sat cross-legged in a composed manner while a white rabbit squatted alone on the ground at his feet, and it was terrified, uneasy, anxious, hesitant. Outside the Grand Formation, the destruction of the formation was carried out like a raging fire. Meow Meow's eyes were always fixed upon the Grand Formation. Since she started breaking open the formation until now, everything was within her expectations, and every single step had been carried out in a practically perfect manner. But a wisp of faint uneasiness arose in her heart for no reason or rhyme, and it seemed to be because it was going too smoothly. It was precisely this strand of uneasiness that caused Meow Meow to be even more vigilant. She utterly didn't dare slack off in the slightest, and the speed she issued her commands grew swifter and swifter. Only the last layer of talisman diagram remains. So long as it's destroyed, then everything is over. This won't do. I must speed it up even more. After a short moment, Meow Meow took a deep breath before she suddenly turned around and said to Whitetail King, "Whitetail King, lead all your remaining subordinates to kill your way into the Grand Formation now." Whitetail King was stunned, and then he frowned and said, "Does this king have to make a move as well?" Meow Meow's expression was extremely firm. "This is the most important moment, and we must focus all our strength to destroy the Grand Formation in one go. Whitetail King, don't forget that you're working for the Wuxia clan." The nearby Zhang Zhulu spoke coldly. Whitetail King's expression sank when the Wuxia clan was mentioned, and the hatred that had been accumulated in his heart for many years faintly showed signs of boiling. He took a deep breath to forcefully restrain the restlessness in his heart, and then he said coldly, "I can allow you to command all of my subordinates, but this king's life won't be handed over to the hands of a little girl." Meow Meow knew that this was the best outcome when she heard this, and she immediately nodded in agreement. "Humph." Zhang Zhulu grunted coldly with discontent instead. Whitetail King didn't care about Zhang Zhulu's attitude at all. He immediately ordered the other cosmos beasts in the vicinity to obey Meow Meow's command, and they charged into the Grand Formation. "Everyone, hear my command. Forward assault with all your might." Meow Meow's calm and cold voice revealed a wisp of a resolute and decisive tone. "Rumble!" In the next moment, the entire Grand Formation trembled violently and shook without end. The various bolts of lightning contained within it couldn't help but dim down as well. Its imposing aura became greatly inferior when compared to before. Quick! 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 Outside the Grand Formation, Meow Meow's expression was cold and aloof, yet she was anxious in her heart instead because the strand of uneasiness that coiled around her heart became more and more clearly. It seemed as if something bad was about to happen. The formation is destroyed. Meanwhile, a beast suddenly roared towards the sky, and it caused everyone to seethe with excitement. Meow Meow's heart shook instead, and then she swiftly turned around to look. However, when she saw the so-called destroyed formation clearly, the wisp of a smile that hadn't been fully formed on the corners of her mouth had instantly frozen. "Meow Meow, do you want me to lend you a hand?" Zhang Zhulu roared with laughter as he flew over. "You did well." Whitetail King soared into the sky as well, and then he nodded at Meow Meow to display his praise. Meow Meow seemed as if she didn't notice all of this instead, and her gaze stared fixedly at the core area of the Grand Formation as she muttered, "Why is it like this? Could it be that I fell into his trap since I started breaking open the formation? It can't be, it definitely can't be." Because she was too horrified, she didn't conceal her voice, and it was clearly heard by Zhang Zhulu and Whitetail King. Both of their hearts instantly jerked as they cried out in their hearts. Shit! Right at this moment, a terrifying and oppressive aura suddenly effused out from within the Grand Formation. It was like a primeval ferocious beast that had been jolted awake after slumbering for countless years, and it emanated a piercingly cold aura that caused the heavens and the earth to be cast into a shade. At this instant, all the seething and clamorous noise in the surroundings stopped abruptly. The terrifying aura spread at extreme speed, and it instantly enveloped the entire area. At the same time, The entire major thunderclap devil-break slaughter formation that was destroyed to the point of being on the verge of collapse seemed like a withered tree that had come back to life again, and it suddenly emanated a strange fluctuation. Strands of gray bolts of lightning were visibly being effused out from the outer area of the grand formation, and then it enveloped the entire grand formation like tidewater. After that, a thunderous bang resounded, and it shook the heavens and the earth. At this instant, a myriad of thick and zigzagged bolts of lightning swept down from the sky like an ocean, and it drowned the heavens and the earth. This sudden change of events caused the Cosmos Beast army that was still charging within the grand formation to fall into chaos, and their faces couldn't help but be covered in terror. Shit! We've fallen for a trap. Damn it! Wasn't the grand formation destroyed? What's going on? What exactly is going on? Why is it like this? Despicable native of the 3 dimensions. That woman definitely deceived us. Waves of furious roars shot into the sky, and they rose and fell through the air. But in next to no time, it was drowned out by the surging thunderclaps, and then another wave of miserable cries of escape resounded. The scene was in extreme chaos. Outside the battlefield, Meow Meow's cold and beautiful face had instantly become ghastly pale while her pupils dilated, and she bit her lips forcefully while standing there silently. I fell for his trap. She finally confirmed that since the moment she started break open the formation, she'd actually fallen for Xianxia's trap. That grand formation was absolutely not an ordinary major thunderclap devil-break slaughter formation. She was even able to discern that it was precisely her actions of breaking open the formation that added fuel to the flame instead, and it caused the grand formation's might to increase greatly once more. Why did it turn out like this? Since she started cultivating until now, this was the first time an indescribable feeling of defeat arose in Meow Meow's heart. The attainments in the Tao of Talismans that she took pride in were actually like a joke at this moment, and it caused her heart to be filled with boundless frustration and defeat. This king needs an explanation. The nearby white-tail king's expression was livid while his eyes almost blazed with flames. The wild joy he felt earlier had instantly been replaced by extreme rage when he saw the scene before his eyes. With his discerning ability, how could he be unable to determine that the might of this grand formation had become even more terrifying than when it was completely unharmed? If it wasn't for Meow Meow being someone the Wuxia clan had sent over, the White-Tail King even slightly doubted if this woman was a companion of Xianxia's that had intentionally tricked him. What's there to explain? At this moment, you aren't thinking about how to deal with the scene before our eyes, but you're blaming Meow Meow instead. Could it be that you think our Wuxia clan would trick you? Zhang Zhulu berated coldly. He was in panic in his heart as well, but when he saw White-Tail King questioning Meow Meow, he instantly couldn't be bothered about anything else. His prospects, his future, practically all of it was entrusted to Meow Meow. He was going to take Meow Meow as his Tao companion in the future, so how could he possibly sit idly by? The corners of White-Tail King's mouth twitched while his expression was extremely gloomy, and he gnashed his teeth as he said, "Don't force my hand. If you do, then I'll disregard the fact that you're related to the Wuxia clan." As soon as these words were spoken, Zhang Zhulu was instantly speechless. Meanwhile, Meow Meow had already recovered from her shock and said, "White-Tail King, if I really wanted to harm you, then you'd have probably fallen into the grand formation right now." "You're right, and if it wasn't for that, both of you'd be dead a long time ago." White-Tail King grunted coldly, and then he paid no further attention to the two of them and looked towards the grand formation instead. Within the grand formation, thunderstorms surged while bolts of lightning danced about wildly. Waves of miserable and shrill howls resounded from time to time, and everything within the formation couldn't be seen clearly any longer. But just by listening to the sounds emanated from within the grand formation, it was obvious what sort of calamity the Cosmos Beast army was suffering. This caused White-Tail King's expression to become even more gloomy, and he said with an icy cold voice, "Now, both of you better think of a way to save the situation. Otherwise, if all my subordinates perish, then both of you must be buried alongside them." After he spoke these words, White-Tail King turned around and sat within the bronze-treasured carriage, and he didn't speak another word. "Humph. You're cowardly and without ability to save your own subordinates, yet you push all the responsibility onto us. Jiang Zhulu spoke indignantly. Don't say any more. Yin Miao Miao frowned as she said, He isn't joking. Jiang Zhulu was stunned, and then his expression became serious. Then what should we do? Could it be that we should charge into that grand formation? Allow me to deduce for a while longer. Yin Miao Miao took a deep breath and forcefully restrained the various feelings in her heart. And then she stared at the distant grand formation before she started to deduce silently. At the center of the grand formation, Wei Na opened her eyes wide while staring blankly at the scene in the distance, and she frequently rubbed her eyes while seeming to be perplexed and shocked. Why did it turn out like this? Wasn't the grand formation destroyed? Wei Na suddenly bit the tip of her tongue, and the intense pain allowed her to be clearly aware that she wasn't hallucinating. In other words, everything before her eyes was real. Within the grand formation, numerous cosmos beasts were being annihilated by thunderbolts in succession, and those numerous figures that emitted furious and disgruntled roars while fleeing in all directions actually existed for real. A strand of indescribable shock suffused Wei Na's entire body, and it caused her to be unable to refrain herself from raising her head to glance at Chen, while she muttered in her heart. No wonder he was so composed. It turns out that he'd planned everything since the beginning. How laughable it was that I was anxious and terrified earlier. How regretful. Right at this moment, Chen, who'd been sitting in meditation with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes, and his voice revealed a wisp of regret. Wei Na felt that her brain was unable to process all of this because the army of cosmos beasts were on the verge of annihilation right before her eyes. What's regretful about this? She didn't know what Wei Na was thinking in her heart. He directly stood up and silently scanned the surroundings of the grand formation for a moment before he suddenly said, Prepare yourself, we might have no choice but to kill our way out later. Wei Na was stunned, and she couldn't refrain herself from asking, Isn't the grand formation fine and well? She shook his head. Yet he didn't explain because Wei Na wouldn't understand even if he did. Since the moment he found out Whitetail King had led all his subordinates over, she was clearly aware that the Whitetail King would definitely break the formation open. Even if Whitetail King didn't possess the assistance of a talisman formation grandmaster, Whitetail King would destroy the grand formation with brute force. So, since the beginning when he set up the major Thunderclap Devil Break Slaughter formation, he'd already made some slight changes to the talisman formation structure, and he utilized the profundities of the Devour Divine Talisman. In this way, the attacks of his enemies were completely devoured by the Grand Formation and merged into the Grand Formation, allowing the might of the Grand Formation to be improved. However, she hadn't expected that In Miao Miao would actually come along with the army of cosmos beasts and break open his Grand Formation with the Tao of Talismans, and it sped up the process of the Grand Formation devouring the attacks of his enemies instead. In this way, the immortal materials and foundation of the Grand Formation he set up were on the verge of being saturated from devouring too much energy. Once it erupted, the Grand Formation would collapse and shatter on its own within a short period of time. Rumble. Sure enough, an enormous bang that shook the heavens resounded from within the Grand Formation after a short period of time, and then the terrifying waves of air shot into the sky to form an enormous mushroom cloud that spanned 50 kilometers into the surroundings and completely illuminated the heavens and the earth. When they saw this scene, In Miao Miao, Jiang Zhulu, and Whitetail King retreated simultaneously without end as they were deeply afraid of being struck by the aftershock. The Grand Formation has actually been really destroyed. I'm alive. I'm fucking alive. Ha ha. Damn it. I'll kill that kid. I'll tear him up and swallow him alive. Amidst the dust and dirt that suffused the sky, a wave of clamorous noise resounded. It turned out that many members of the Cosmos Beast army were still alive within the Grand Formation, and a rough count put them at almost 500 in number. Obviously, these were all experts of the Cosmos Beast army, otherwise they would have perished a long time ago. However, this number caused Whitetail King's expression to be extremely unsightly. Presently, in a short period of less than 10 minutes, he'd actually lost over 1,000 from his almost 2,000 subordinates. This sort of heavy loss caused his heart to tighten. On the other hand, Yin Miao Miao and Zhang Zhulu heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts instead. The grand formation was destroyed, and a few hundred cosmos beasts were still alive, so Whitetail King would naturally not dare to harm them. Look quickly. It's that native of the 3 dimensions. Kill. Kill that despicable bastard. Kill. Meanwhile, the dust and dirt dispersed, causing their fields of vision to clear up. At the area that was originally the center of the grand formation was a tall figure standing there. When they saw him, the eyes of those few hundred cosmos beasts that were lucky enough to survive had instantly turned red as they let out furious roars, and there wasn't even any need to instruct them before they charged ferociously at Chen Shi. At the same time, Zhang Zhulu and Yin Miao Miao saw Chen Shi as well. When they thought about how they'd been played by Chen Shi earlier and almost caused Whitetail King to take revenge on them, a wisp of hatred surged out of their hearts. However, they didn't make a move. Others might not be aware, but they were clearly aware that Chen Shi was ranked at the 9th position during the first round of the test, and he was even more highly ranked than Zuoqiuyin. Under such circumstances, how could they possibly put themselves in danger? Most importantly, they were ranked at the 278th and 215th respectively, and it was an extremely large distance away from Chen Shi. Even if they were unwilling to admit it, they had to accept this sort of distance. Fortunately, they had the Whitetail King by their side. The Whitetail King was an existence who possessed strength that was comparable to those ranked in the top 10 of the Ascension Immortal rankings, and coupled with the 2 of them and the few hundreds of cosmos beasts in the distance, it was sufficient to deal with Chen Shi. Right when Yin Miao Miao and Zhang Zhulio's thoughts were flashing swiftly, Chen Shi had launched a slaughter. His figure was tall, his clothes fluttered, and his footsteps were composed and relaxed. He moved alone within the encirclement of the Cosmos Beast army, yet he seemed as if he was taking a stroll within a courtyard. Pooh, pooh, pooh. But in the eyes of those Cosmos Beasts, this native of the 3 dimensions before their eyes was like a sword, a peerlessly sharp sword, a supreme and invincible weapon of slaughter. He didn't make a single move from the beginning until the end, yet his entire body was suffused with strands of extremely sharp, murderous, and fierce sword chi that drifted through the sky and transformed into hazy and dreamlike strands of fine rain that spread through the surroundings. After that, Cosmos Beast after Cosmos Beast that charged towards him fell. They were sliced into pieces of flesh while a rain of blood sprayed through the sky and shrill cries shook the heavens. When looked at from afar, Chen Shi, who was encircled by the Cosmos Beast army, was like a sharp blade that could reach the sky, and he smashed through the Cosmos Beast army and forcefully tore open a path of death where the glow of blood fluttered through the sky. Pooh, pooh, pooh. A rain of blood sprayed through the sky while pieces of flesh shot out in all directions. A mist of blood formed from the dense aura of blood and drifted through the heavens and the earth, and the scope of the mist of blood gradually expanded along with Chen Shi's footsteps. His movements seemed to be slow, yet every single step he took was actually swift like a bolt of lightning. He moved 3 kilometers in an instant as if he was shrinking the distance between him and his enemies. Even though it couldn't be compared to true teleportation, yet it was already swift to the limit. However, the sword chi his entire body emanated was even swifter than his movement technique, and it was even sharper. The supreme sword chi that represented the sword of water transformed into a hazy drizzle that suffused the heavens and the earth, and it enveloped every inch of space along his path. Every single cosmos beast that charged forward didn't even arrive 3 kilometers in his vicinity before they were directly minced and shattered into pieces by the sharp sword chi before they exploded to death. Yet it just so happened that Chen Shi seemed to be completely unaware of this all. His expression was calm and aloof while he focused his gaze towards the distance, and he didn't seem like he was carrying out a slaughter but was like a passing traveler instead. A traveler that passed through this place and inadvertently gave rise to a storm of blood and seized countless lives. He was calm and composed while his sword chi was like a dreamlike drizzle. He pressed forward without stopping while the ground beneath his feet was covered in shattered corpses, flowing blood, and bone fragments, walking upright and alone in green clothes while laying down a path of slaughter. Pooh, pooh, pooh. Muffled bangs rose up and down like a note of death, and it was like the bell of the god of death that gradually drowned out the furious roars in the surroundings. After an unknown period of time, or perhaps it was only an instant, or perhaps it was an extremely long time, the furious roars in the surroundings had transformed into silence, and only the muffled sounds of blood spraying resounded and caused the atmosphere to be oppressive to the limit. Terror rose in the hearts of every single cosmos beast, and it drowned their entire bodies like tidewater. Suddenly, a cosmos beast was unable to endure the bloody scenes before his eyes, and he roared fiercely before fleeing in panic. This was like a fuse, and in the next moment, the beast army that was horrified long ago rumbled as it fled in all directions. They seemed as if they wished for nothing more than to be born with a few more legs. She didn't care about all of this at all. Since the moment the major thunderclap Devilbreak slaughter formation was destroyed, his immortal sense and vital energy had already locked firmly only Jiang Zhulu, Yin Miao Miao, and Whitetail King. As for those other cosmos beasts, he really didn't care about them. Even if they possessed a number of almost 500, in his eyes, they were only a group of useless beasts that were at his mercy. This was the absolutely advantage his strength gave him. Even though she was only at the initial stage of the mysterious immortal realm, his combat strength was already practically invincible amongst those of the same generation, and it was obvious from his ranking at the 9th position during the first round of the test. Moreover, he was also the one and only existence at the initial stage of the mysterious immortal realm within the top 10 of the Xianxia immortal rankings. Coupled with the inheritance of the Sword of Water that he obtained from comprehending the infinite divine talisman, it was extremely difficult for his peers to compare to him in terms of lethality. Yes, from the beginning until the end, Xianxia's target had always been the distant Jiang Zhulu, Yin Miao Miao, and Whitetail King. Whitetail King's aura was formidable and brought a great deal of pressure to him, so he attached the most importance to Whitetail King. On the other hand, Yin Miao Miao and Jiang Zhulu were his enemies, so he didn't intend to let the two of them leave now. Even if he was clearly aware that he was unable to truly kill the two of them within the Bloodlands, but so long as he was able to eliminate them from the test, then the two of them wouldn't have another chance to enter Dao Emperor Academy. In this way, he would have indirectly destroyed their future, and it would be an extremely easy task to kill them in the future. His body didn't move while suffused with sword chi, and he forcefully tore open a path of blood amidst the beast army while seeming to be invincible. When they saw this scene, Jiang Zhulu and Yin Miao Miao couldn't help but be anxious. This was the first time they'd witnessed Xianxia's combat strength since leaving Southbridge Continent, and they finally understood why he was able to be ranked at the 9th position during the first round of the test. Merely this murderous, fierce, and matchless sword chi was far from something the two of them were able to accomplish, and he could be described as the #1 expert in the sword Dao within the initial stage of the mysterious immortal realm. All of this caused a wisp of depression to fill the space between their brows. It was extremely difficult for them to accept it, yet they had to accept it, and it was difficult to imagine, yet it had already become a fact before their eyes. Make Whitetail King make a move later while we flee temporarily and return to converge with Zuoqiuyin. She isn't someone we're able to go against. Yin Miao Miao took a deep breath as she forcefully restrained the complicated and shocked feelings in her heart, while she spoke swiftly via voice transmission. At this instant, she suddenly remembered an event of the past. She recalled that when she faced Xianxia's challenge that day, she'd once said that Xianxia was unworthy. After that, she recalled the answer Xianxia had once gave her. "You won't have any qualifications to challenge me in the future." At that time, she felt it was immature and extremely absurd. Yet when she recalled it now, it was like a resounding slap that stuck her face and her heart. This sort of feeling caused her to feel unhappy, defeated, and frustrated, and it was a feeling that she'd never had since she started cultivating until now. "All right." Jiang Zhulio's expression changed indeterminately when he heard Yin Miao Miao's voice transmission, and then he gritted his teeth and agreed in the end. It was merely a single word, yet it seemed to have been squeezed out from the cracks between his teeth and was extremely difficult and heavy for him. He wasn't willing to admit that he was inferior to Xianxia, but he had no choice but to admit it before this cruel reality. Thus, his mood became extremely depressed and horrible. "Quickly, get prepared. The beast army is about to scatter." Yin Miao Miao's expression turned grim as she spoke swiftly. Zhang Zhulu was shocked in his heart, and then he raised his eyes to look over. Sure enough, he noticed that the merely 200 or so cosmos beasts that remained were already fleeing in panic towards all directions. Swoosh! However, to the surprise of Yin Miao Miao and Zhang Zhulu, Whitetail King that had always been accumulating strength while waiting to make a move at the side had actually fled at this moment. How could anyone have expected that a Cosmos Beast expert who was comparable to the experts ranked in the top 10 of the Ascension Immortal rankings would actually choose to flee so cowardly after watching more than half of his subordinates being slaughtered mercilessly? At the very least, both Zhang Zhulu and Yin Miao Miao hadn't expected it. Damn it! Both of you just wait. This kid's combat strength is so formidable, yet both of you actually dared to use him to trick this king. I'll definitely take revenge for this later. Whitetail King's voice that was filled with boundless resentment sounded out from afar, and it caused Yin Miao Miao and Zhang Zhulio's hearts to sink while their faces turned pale. Miao Miao, leave. I'll cover your retreat. Otherwise, you won't be able to flee. A wisp of ruthlessness flashed on Zhang Zhulio's face, and then he gritted his teeth as he spoke. His voice revealed a strand of madness, yet there was even more resolution within it. Yin Miao Miao was stunned, and she was slightly moved as she said, "All right, if you suffer any harm today, then I'll take 10 times the revenge from him." As she spoke, she glanced deeply at Zhang Zhulu before she didn't hesitate to turn and leave. Leaving? Stay behind. Suddenly, Chun Shi's indifferent and calm voice sounded out from afar. Along with this voice, his figure transformed into a wisp of lightning that swiftly pursued the distant Yin Miao Miao. Whitetail King's sudden flight took Chun Shi by surprise as well, and it messed up his plan, causing him to be unable to control the situation in time. At this moment, when he saw Yin Miao Miao actually intended to flee as well, he naturally wouldn't sit idly by as this occurred. Swoosh! However, before Chun Shi could chase up to Yin Miao Miao, he was stopped on the way by Zhang Zhulu. Chun Shi, I'm your opponent. As he spoke, Zhang Zhulu suddenly howled fiercely before a silver immortal sword appeared within his palm, and it was coiled with layer upon layer of the energy of the laws as it slashed down at Chun Shi. His move was violent and revealed an aura of indifference towards life and death. Clang! Chun Shi frowned. He flicked lightly with his finger, yet it was like a sledgehammer when it smashed onto the blade of Zhang Zhulio's sword, and it shook him to the point Zhang Zhulio's sword move collapsed while Zhang Zhulio's body staggered. Chun Shi paid no further attention to him and pursued Yin Miao Miao once more. Unless you kill me otherwise, don't hope of pursuing Miao Miao. However, Zhang Zhulu was actually not dejected in the slightest as he charged forward once more. His silver immortal sword transformed into a monstrous veil of swords that seemed like an expanse of bright silver clouds as it enveloped towards Chun Shi. This strike was actually terrifying to the extreme, and it carried the ruthless and horrifying intent to take Chun Shi down with him, and it caused Chun Shi's brows to raise as well while he didn't dare be careless against the strike. He formed a sword with his fingers before slashing out with the move, Cloud Wave Destruction. A myriad of strands of sword chi transformed into waves of clouds that rushed down, and it easily crushed Zhang Zhulio's attack. But in this way, Yin Miao Miao had already fled to the point there was no sign of her any longer. What a pity, said Chun Shi in his heart. He turned around to look at Zhang Zhulu with an extremely icy cold gaze. He was truly unable to figure out why this fellow who was ranked at the first position on the Southbridge Continent's Continental Ascension rankings would be so impossible to tolerate. There was no enmity between the two of them, and he actually didn't hesitate to go against Chun Shi merely for the sake of Yin Miao Miao. Moreover, he even colluded with the Wuxia clan in secret, and it truly caused Chun Shi to be utterly disappointed. Chun Shi, come. Didn't you want to kill me since a long time ago? It's your only chance now. Zhang Zhulu sneered while revealing an expression of insanity. His gaze swept the surroundings before he said rather regretfully, "Unfortunately, this is the Bloodlands, so you can't really annihilate me." "Ha." Chun Shi frowned and said, "Could it be that you've never thought about the fact that you won't have another chance to enter Dao Emperor Academy once you're eliminated from this round of the test? At that time, do you think Yin Miao Miao will still become Dao companions with you?" As soon as these words were spoken, Zhang Julio's expression froze before he said furiously, "Meow Meow isn't that sort of person." She glanced at him with slight pity. "Even you're clearly aware that your background can't compare to Meow Meow. Now that you have no chance to enter Dao Emperor Academy, even if Meow Meow agrees to become Dao companions with you, the members of the clan will probably not agree to it." Shi's voice was calm and indifferent, yet every single word was like a sharp blade that pierced into Zhang Julio's heart, causing his expression to change indeterminately without end. "Haha, it's true. I'm of poor background that can't compare to the clan. Moreover, I'm about to be eliminated as well. But what about you? Zhuoqiu has already arranged a full array of methods to eliminate you from the test. Do you think the Zhuoqiu clan will allow you to continue existing once you're unable to enter Dao Emperor Academy?" Zhang Zhulu suddenly roared with laughter. "In terms of situation, yours is even worse than me. What qualifications do you have to laugh at me? Most importantly, even if I'm of poor birth, it's 1,000,000 times higher than a fellow like you that ascended from the mortal dimension." Shi's expression was indifferent as he looked calmly at Zhang Zhulu and said, "Is background so important?" His voice carried a strange wisp of emotion within it because he'd recalled his mother, Zhuoqiu Shui. Zhang Zhulu laughed with ridicule when he heard Shi's question, and he looked at Shi as if he was looking at an idiot. His eyes were actually filled with a wisp of pity. "How could a fellow that ascended from the mortal dimension like you understand backgrounds? Are you even worthy of talking about backgrounds with me?" Zhang Julio's voice revealed a strand of resentment. He seemed to have recalled the bumpy journey he'd traversed all through these years, and at the same time, his voice carried a strand of contempt and a feeling of superiority. It was his answer to Shi's question. Yes, he looked down upon Shi. He looked down upon Shi's background. He felt that even though he was poor, he was born in the immortal dimension in the end, whereas Shi was only a fellow that had ascended from the mortal dimension. Shi remained indifferent towards this, and he just glanced at Zhang Zhulu before he said, "All right, since you want to compare backgrounds, then I'm not afraid to tell you that my father was just like me. He was only an ordinary person from the mortal dimension. Perhaps this sort of background is lowly like an ant in your eyes, but my mother was the eldest daughter amongst the direct descendants of the Zhuoqiu clan." When he heard the first half of what Shi said, besides feeling contempt, Zhang Zhulu felt slight admiration for Shi. He felt that even though Shi was of lowly birth, Shi still wasn't so bad because he dared to admit it. But when he heard the second half, his expression instantly froze while his eyes suddenly stared wide open, and he seemed to be filled with disbelief. The eldest daughter amongst the direct descendants of the Zhuoqiu clan? How could this be possible? If it's really like this, then why does the Zhuoqiu clan want to kill him? When he thought up to here, Zhang Julio's expression became greatly indeterminate, and the corners of his mouth were suffused once more with a wisp of dense ridicule. For the sake of competing in background with me, this fellow actually made up a relationship with the Zhuoqiu clan. How laughable! Shi paid no attention to Zhang Zhulu. This secret had been stored within his heart for countless years, and he'd never told anyone about it. But now he didn't care any longer, because he was about to enter Dao Emperor Academy, and he would soon have no need to worry about the situation he was in. So why would he worry about the Zhuoqiu clan's revenge? Most importantly, then Zhuoqiu clan was already aware that he was still alive, whereas he was similarly aware that the Zhuoqiu clan wouldn't let him off. Thus, there wasn't any point in concealing all of this any longer. So what if the entire immortal dimension found out? Even if I'm unwilling to admit it, but the truth is half my bloodline is from the Zhuoqiu clan. But I don't care because it was given to me by my mother, and not the Zhuoqiu clan. Shi's voice was calm. It wasn't forceful yet carried a force of its own. Moreover, my mother severed all relationship with the Zhuoqiu clan a long time ago. Perhaps this is inconceivable in your opinion, but my mother did that. As for the specific reason, you can ask Zhuoqiu Kong if you want to know. But I guess he won't tell you and will directly annihilate you instead. In other words, you're not qualified to know the reason with your identity, and you ought to be even more aware of the advantages and disadvantages of this. Shi spoke word by word. He didn't try to convince Jiang Zhulu, but after Jiang Zhulu finished listening to Chen Shi, Jiang Zhulu faintly felt that perhaps Chen Shi was telling the truth. This caused his expression to become slightly unsightly while his heart felt empty and painful. In the end, he gritted his teeth and laughed coldly as he said, "You're simply full of nonsense. You're mad." Chen Shi let out a long breath of foul air while his gaze became calm and indifferent once more. "No matter what, the day will come when I'll step through the Wuxia clan's entrance and reclaim what she lost all those years ago. And I'll annihilate everyone that harmed her all those years ago. Later, you can tell Wuxia Kong that I, Chen Shi, will make his father, Wuxia Feng, pay for everything he did to my mother all those years ago. Tell the Wuxia clan to just wait. Wait." It was merely a single word, yet it was filled with the fury and resentment he'd stored up for countless years, and it also carried a wisp of resolution and firmness. Jiang Zhulio's expression changed successively. No matter how unwilling he was to believe this, his Dao heart told him that Chen Shi seemed to be telling the truth. Wuxia Kong was one of the 6 blazing sons of the Immortal dimension. Wuxia Feng was the current patriarch of the Wuxia clan. Yet Chen Shi actually clearly said that he intended to step foot into the Wuxia clan and take revenge one day. These words sounded so absurd. Yet Jiang Zhulu just happened to discern an undoubtable tone within it, and it caused his heart to instantly fall into chaos. "Why did you tell me all of this?" Jiang Zhulu gritted his teeth and cried out furiously. "Chen," she said indifferently, "I just wanted to tell you that with your status, you'll only die even faster if you interfere in the enmity between me and the Wuxia clan. Moreover, you can't afford to interfere at all." Jiang Zhulio's heart shook fiercely while his expression was warped and livid. He attached most importance towards his background, so he was naturally even more clearly aware of the meaning and might contained within Chen Shi's words. Moreover, he was the most clearly aware that he did indeed have no qualifications to interfere in the matter with his background. Why? Why is it like this? Why have I always worked so hard, yet suffer such hardships merely because of my poor origins? Why? Why? Jiang Zhulu muttered while his frustrated expression carried a wisp of insanity. Chen Shi couldn't help but shake his head when he saw this. Pooh! A wisp of sword chi easily pierced through Jiang Zhulio's throat. But Jiang Zhulu didn't notice at all, and he still muttered, "Why? Why?" Up until the point the violet ribbon starcrest within Jiang Zhulio's body was activated before it transformed into a wisp of violet light that took him out of the Bloodlands, Jiang Zhulu had still not awoken from that insane state. Just like this, the existence that was ranked at the first position on Southbridge Continent's Continental Ascension rankings was so easily eliminated from the second round of the test. Instead of saying that he'd lost at Chen Shi's hand, he could be said to have lost to his own inner demons. Because his background had become his inner demon a long time ago. He cared too much about his background, to the point his Dao heart had been covered up while he fell into obsession. Even if he was able to pass the test successfully this time, he wouldn't be able to ascend the peak of the Grand Dao in the future. Chen Shi started to clean up the battlefield. The major Thunderclap Devilbreak Slaughter formation had practically exhausted all the immortal materials in his possession. But the gains from the battle were extremely delightful as well. Over 1,000 of Whitetail King's almost 2,000 subordinates had perished within the Grand Formation, while another 300 had been killed by his sword chi, so only another 200 or so beasts had fled into the surroundings. Even then, it was sufficient to be called an enormous gain. Not to mention the beast bones and various immortal materials that covered the ground. Merely the star points he gained had leaped from 514 to 4,300. However, Chen Shi was slightly displeased because the beasts that had perished in the Grand Formation were worth so few star points. Every single one of them only earned him a single star point, just like the Sorloboa he encountered and killed when he first arrived in the Bloodlands. Merely a small portion of the beasts earned him around 5 star points, and only those 5 Lords of the Cosmos beasts were worthy around 60 star points each. They could be considered to be rather valuable existences. Especially after Jiang Zhulu was eliminated from the test, the star points in his Violet Ribbon Starcrest had been fully obtained by Chen Shi, and it was an entire 200 in number. This allowed Chen Shi to come to a deep understanding. No wonder those disciples that entered the Bloodlands are fighting each other. Merely the star points obtained are worth the risk. It'll probably be very difficult for me to earn star points like this in the future. Xianxia pondered as he cleaned up the battlefield. He was very clearly aware that luck played an absolutely large part in the battle earlier. If it wasn't for the Whitetail King taking the initiative to make a move, if it wasn't for him having set up the major Thunderclap Devilbreak Slaughter formation, if it wasn't for Miao Miao unintentionally fanning the fire and helping him improve the might of the Grand Formation, it would absolutely be impossible for him to obtain so many star points. After this, Zhuoqiu will definitely find out about everything that occurred here very soon. If he intends to eliminate me from the test, then it's already to Zhuoqiu clan's last chance. So it won't be long before they'll probably come looking for me. Xianxia frowned as he suddenly realized something. What if the disciples of the Zhuoqiu clan don't come for him? After all, only 76 disciples of the Zhuoqiu clan were able to enter the second round of the test this time, and merely 16 of them were ranked in the top 100. Such a force was naturally formidable beyond all doubt, yet if they were to collide with him head-on, then they would definitely have to pay a heavy price because Xianxia's combat strength ranking had firmly surpassed all the disciples of the Zhuoqiu clan during the first round of the test. This won't do. I can't continue waiting like this. They're unwilling to allow me to pass the test, and it's even more impossible for me to watch them pass smoothly through to the next round of the test. After pondering deeply for a long time, a wisp of resolution floated up onto Xianxia's face. He intended to act against the Zhuoqiu clan from this moment onward. And as for star points, it wouldn't be late to earn them once all the elimination slots in the second round were filled. After all, this round of the test only eliminated 300 disciples. If he was a bit late, then he would be unable to stop the disciples of the Zhuoqiu clan from participating in the third round of the test even if he hunted all of them down. Swoosh! After he finished cleaning up the battlefield, Xianxia's figure flashed before he directly left the area. On the way, he was able to clearly sense that numerous immortal senses were scanning him from a few thousand kilometers in the surroundings. However, after they noticed his own immortal sense, these fellows restrained their auras before fleeing in all directions. Obviously, the battle between him and Whitetail King's subordinates could be considered to be a large-scale battle, and it was impossible for it to not draw the attention of others. These fellows are still having wishful thoughts of reaping the final benefits. If they dare go against me, then I guarantee they'll regret it for their entire lifetimes. Xianxia pondered briefly before he shook his head and paid no further attention to these fellows. Xianxia wasn't moving forward blindly, and he was tracing back the path of the beast army from before. In this way, he would be able to enter smoothly into the southeast area of the Bloodlands before approaching the central area. On the other hand, if the disciples of the Zhuoqiu clan intended to take revenge on him, then it was very likely that they would move forward along this path. At the outside world, the rankings and number of star point on the floating wall of light at the square before Dao Emperor Academy was changing swiftly at all times. But the changes in the top 100 positions was much slower. The reason was extremely simple. Practically all those 100 positions were monopolized by the disciples of top powers like the 7 great ancient clans. It was truly too difficult to push them down from their positions in the top 100. However, right at this moment, the gazes of everyone were drawn over in unison by a single name. That name was Xianxia. Xianxia was ranked at the 15th position on the floating wall of light earlier, and his star points were at a total of 514. This position and amount of star points was very dangerous, and it wasn't much apart from the disciples that were ranked between the 15th and 20th position. He was at risk of being surpassed at any moment. It was precisely because of this that not many people paid any attention to Xianxia at that time. After all, compared to Xianxia, the existences ranked in the top 10 were the most attention-drawing and most worthy of anticipation because they were able to discern the competition and rivalry between the disciples of the Buddha Dimension, Immortal Dimension, Dragon Dimension, Phoenix Clan, and the various other top powers from the top 10 positions. It could be said that the gazes of most people present here were drawn over by those positioned in the top 10. However, at this moment, their gazes had moved in unison, because there was a name that was rising repeatedly at an inconceivable speed, and in merely the time of a few breaths, it had charged its way into the top 10. That name was Chen Shi. On the other hand, his star points were swiftly changing like a rolling snowball that grew larger as it moved. The eyes of everyone present opened wide when they saw this scene, and their eyeballs almost fell from their sockets. Moreover, a wave of gasping that rose and fell resounded from the square. My God! He's too heaven-defying. What's going on? His points instantly increased to over 2,000 in an instant. It's impossible to obtain so many star points, even if one killed a king amongst the cosmos beasts. Could it be that this fellow hunted another disciple that was ranked in the top 100 and seized the star points that disciple possessed? Impossible! No name has vanished from the top 100 on the floating wall of light for now. Moreover, Xianxia, who's ranked at the 10th position, has only gained 1,700 star points. All of this shows that the star points Chen Shi obtained weren't obtained from hunting other disciples. This is too shocking. Keep quiet. Didn't all of you notice that Chen Shi's position is still rising? The sounds of discussion stopped abruptly because everyone noticed to their horror that after Chen Shi's position shot into the top 10 once more, his star points were still changing. Moreover, along with these changes in his star points, his position on the rankings rose step by step as well. Even though this process was slow, it didn't show any signs of slowing down. Such a scene even caused Wang Dailu, who stood silently in midair, to be shocked in his heart. Even though Dao Emperor Academy's recruitment test was being presided over by him this time, the second round of the test was occurring within the Bloodlands, and even he was unable to observe the situation within. So he couldn't help but be surprised and bewildered when he saw such a scene, and he was unable to infer an explanation. 2,600 star points, the 9th position has been reclaimed by Chen Shi. Zhuoqiuyin has become the 10th once more. These two people are really a pair of rivals. 2,900 star points, he has ascended to the 7th position. 3,400 star points, the 5th-ranked Ao Wuming has been pushed down as well. 3,800 star points, he has killed his way to the 4th position. I wonder how Zhongli Sun would feel if he knew that his position had been seized away by Chen Shi. Every single time Chen Shi's position took a step forward, it drew an uproar in the crowd. In the end, the expressions of everyone present here had been shocked to the point of becoming slightly stiff. This change in star points wasn't quite normal. If this test wasn't set up by Dao Emperor Academy, then they would even have slight suspicions that Chen Shi had cheated. Charging from over 500 star points to 3,000 points, how many cosmos beasts or xenorace experts would have to be killed to accomplish this? Most importantly, all of this had occurred in an extremely short period of time. Just think about it. Could anyone beneath the golden immortal realm accomplish all of this in such a short period of time within the Bloodlands? In the distant halls, the space between Zhuoqiu's brows were once again covered in a wisp of gloominess, whereas Mu Linglong's little face flushed red while she clenched her tender fists together tightly, and she was uncontrollably excited. Tai Qiuyu roared with laughter instead. He didn't care if the others recognized him or not, but he boasted complacently to everyone in the surroundings. Look, that's the seedling that I selected myself. But even then, it still drew the envious gazes of many people, and it caused Tai Qiuyu's face to bloom with a smile while he was in high spirits. 4,100 star points. My God, he actually ascended into the top 3 and pushed down the Phoenix clan's Zhao Mingli. Before everyone could recover from their shock, Chen Shi's name on the floating wall of light had forcefully ascended into the ranks of the top 3. Moreover, he was only a little over 200 star points away from the second-ranked Ji Xianbing. At this instant, the entire square had become deathly silent. Under the focused gazes of everyone present, Chen Shi's star points started to rise slowly and seemed to be about to stop. This caused many people to heave sighs of relief in their hearts. Especially the Ji clansmen, their expressions eased up because Ji Xianbing was the pride of their clan and the pride of the immortal dimension. Earlier, he'd been surpassed by Zhenlu during the first round of the test, and it had already caused them to feel very depressed. At this moment, when they saw a young man who'd come out from nowhere actually be on the verge of threatening Ji Xuanbing's rankings, they couldn't help but feel slightly anxious. Fortunately, the changes in Xianxi's star points revealed signs of stopping, and it allowed them to be much more at ease. In the end, Xianxi's star points stopped at a 4,300, and he was only 17 star point away from the second-ranked Ji Xianbing. But even then, it caused most of the people present here to praise him without end, and it was as if they'd witnessed the birth of a miracle. At the end, they finally faintly understood how Xianxia had accomplished all of this, and it caused them to stop suspecting that Xianxia had cheated in the test. The details of the matter were recounted by some disciples that had been eliminated from the second round of the test. The position many of them arrived at after entering the Bloodlands was the southeast area, just like Xianxi. They'd more or less witnessed the scene of Whitetail King leading the beast army towards the Blood Spirit Swamp, and they'd witnessed the terrifying might possessed by the grand formation that Xianxi had set up. With the explanation of these disciples, most of the people present here naturally came to an understanding. But the only thing that left them wondering was why Whitetail King would make a move against Xianxi on such a grand scale. Amongst the people present, perhaps only the clansmen of the Wuxia clan were clearly aware of the answer. However, they wouldn't reveal all of this at this moment. There really is something strange about this young man. I'm afraid those old fellows in the academy have already noticed this kid. In the distance, Wang Daolu sighed with emotion in his heart. As far as he was concerned, Xianxi was unable to be compared to Jinlu, Zhaomingli, and Ji Xianbing for now. Even if he was compared to existences like Zhongli Sun, Ao Wuming, and Jiang Songhai, he was still slightly inferior. After all, his was only ranked at the 9th position during the first round of the test. Coupled with this second round of the test had only been carried out for less than a mere 3 days, there was still a very long period left until it ended. If Xianxi was able to maintain this position, then it would naturally impress everyone, but the possibility of this was too low and was practically impossible. Wang Daolu was clearly aware that during the later parts of the second round of the test was the period of time where it was the most brutal and had the most variables. At that time, the cosmos beasts and xenorace experts in the Bloodlands would already be slaughtered completely. In this way, if they wanted to earn star points, they could only accomplish it by fighting and competing with each other, whereas Xianxi, who was all alone, would obviously be in a disadvantageous position when compared to those disciples of the top powers that had grouped together. Unfortunately, I've already taken a personal disciple. Wang Daolu sighed in his heart. Bloodlands, Blackline Gorge. The ground was dyed with blood while corpses lay across it. The air was still suffused with the thick smell of blood. The disciples of the Wuxia clan that had just experienced a large battle carried excited expressions as they patrolled the surroundings and cleaned up the battlefield. Only Wuxia stood on a rock, and a wisp of pride suffused the corners of his mouth as he watched the scene before his eyes. In merely 2 hours of time, they'd completely annihilated the 1,000-plus xenorace experts in Blackline Gorge, allowing every single disciple of the Wuxia clan to obtain 513 star points each. All of this was accomplished by him, Wuxia, so how could he not be filled with pride? The only regret he had was that up until now, there were still 4 disciples of the Wuxia clan that weren't able to converge with them. Obviously, they'd suffered a mishap in the Bloodlands. But this was already sufficient. Presently, there were still an entire 72 disciples of their Wuxia clan that had participated in the second round of the test, and so long as they passed the second round of the test, it would be sufficient for him to give the clan a satisfying answer. As the leader of the Wuxia clan here, Wuxia would even be able to obtain generous rewards from the clan. Swoosh! Right at this moment, a wisp of snow-white flowing light flashed by. Surprisingly, it was that devil-so bird. Wuxia couldn't help but be slightly stunned from seeing this bird, and then he cupped his hands and said, "Could it be that your master has something to instruct me with?" The devil-so bird's eyes were icy cold and carried a wisp of rage. "My master told me to tell you that the target has annihilated Whitetail King's subordinates, whereas Whitetail King and that woman called Miao Miao have fled." What? Wuxia face froze and was filled with disbelief. Up until this point in the second round of the test, only another 37 people need to be eliminated from the test. If you still don't make the best use of your time, then you won't have any chance to eliminate the target from the test. All of you do as you see fit. The devil-so bird spoke coldly before it swiftly transformed into a wisp of white light that vanished without a trace. On the other hand, Zhuoqiu Yin's expression sank immediately. The news brought over by the devil-so bird caused that wisp of pride he felt earlier to instantly vanish without a trace, and his mood was extremely horrible. Chen Shi isn't dead? Whitetail King and Yin Miao Miao fled. How exactly did that fellow accomplish this? Numerous questions surged into Zhuoqiu Yin's heart, causing his brows to knit together tightly, while his gaze became extremely icy cold. After a short moment, he took a deep breath and didn't dare think about it any longer. Everyone, gather up now and follow me to kill the target. Zhuoqiu Yin suddenly turned around and swept all the disciples of the Zhuoqiu clan present here with his gaze. And then he said in a low voice, "We don't have much time left, and the opportunity might even vanish at any moment. So, from this moment onward, we only have a single mission: hunt and kill Chen Shi." Everyone was shocked in their hearts while their expressions turned slightly grim. "Chen Shi is still alive? Do all of you understand?" said Zhuoqiu Yin in a fierce voice. Yes. All of them didn't dare give it another thought before agreeing in unison with murderous expression. Bloodlands, southeast area. Swoosh! A streak of light flashed through the sky along a fixed direction, and it flew towards the distance. On the way, numerous battles could be seen from time to time, and it was either between the disciples participating in the test and cosmos beasts or xenorace experts, or it was between disciples instead. When looked down from midair, every single inch of the ground was dyed dark red with blood and covered in skeletons and bones. It was like a tragic purgatory. Strands of shimmering violet light shot into the sky from time to time, and it represented disciples that had been eliminated from the test. This was the second round of Dao Emperor Academy's recruitment test. It was brutal, bloody, and completely without any rules. For the sake of obtaining star points, every single disciple had become an emotionless hunter that didn't just kill cosmos beasts and xenorace experts. They even killed the other competitors that entered the Bloodlands along with them. All along the way, Chen Shi didn't waste any time, and so long as he noticed trouble approaching, he would go around it without daring to waste even the slightest bit of his time. Moreover, he didn't even earn star points. It was naturally all for the sake of finding the disciples of the Zhuoqiu clan as soon as possible before giving them a heavy blow. Sometimes, he was unable to avoid some trouble, so Chen Shi would attack decisively and annihilate his opponents as soon as possible. In this way, he indirectly earned some star points, and it could be considered a small gain. Friend, since you're traveling alone, why don't you join our group and we'll earn star points together? After all, it's too dangerous to be alone in this Bloodlands. While Chen Shi was flying, a group of people suddenly charged out and blocked his path. Yes, we can't compare to the disciples of those top powers, so it's better to group up as soon as possible. Only in this way would we be able to persist longer in the Bloodlands. Friend, what do you think? This group was around 10+ people in number, and they'd obviously experienced many battles, causing their entire bodies to be filled with the aura of battle. Moreover, their expressions were vigilant, capable, and murderous. I'm not interested. Move aside. Chen Shi glanced coldly at them while his figure didn't stop in the slightest, and he charged over directly. He's seen numerous situations like this all along the way, and they mostly used the name of forming groups to seize the star points of others. Of course, there were some that really desired to form groups. But if the person didn't agree, then they wouldn't hesitate to kill the person, and they didn't have any principles of morality or a line they wouldn't cross. Humph! A little fellow at the initial stage of the mysterious immortal realm dares to refuse us? You're courting death. Since you refuse to submit to our request, then don't blame us for being ruthless. Who asked you to be a competitor of ours? Everyone, don't fight with me for him. This kid's star points are mine. Chen Shi's direct refusal caused their faces to sink, and they didn't discuss it all before swarming over and attacking Chen Shi from all directions. Based on the level of skillfulness their cooperation was at, they'd obviously done this countless times before. Unfortunately, they didn't recognize Chen Shi and only took him to be an expert at the initial stage of the mysterious immortal realm that was easily bullied, otherwise they wouldn't dare act in this way at all. Pooh! 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 Xianxia's figure flashed without stopping in the slightest, and he smashed through them before vanishing. Behind him, strings of scarlet red and hot blood sprayed through the air, while a bloody hole had been pierced through the throats of the entire group of people. Their pupils dilated while their faces stiffed. After that, a wave of buzzing resounded as numerous violet rays of light shot into the sky and carried these fellows that failed in harming Xianxia but harmed themselves instead out of the Bloodlands. Up until the moment they were eliminated, they were unable to understand why they'd lost so quickly and so terribly. This tiny incident didn't affect Xianxia at all. He flew forward directly, and he was on the verge of leaving the scope of the Bloodlands' southeast area. But before he could fly for long, the sound of battle faintly and suddenly sounded out from afar. This caused Xianxia to be unable to help but frown. At this moment, the battles in the Bloodlands are truly frequent. He originally intended to circle around the battlefield, yet in the next moment, his eyes narrowed as he flew towards the source of the sound instead. This was a blood-colored lake that covered an area of 500 kilometers. Bloody waves surged while it emanated a horrifying aura of blood. A battle was being carried out at the side of the blood-red lake. Two young men were surrounded by around 100+ cosmos beasts, and they were in a critical situation. Besides that, there was a group of young people standing not too far away from the battlefield, and all of them wore luxurious clothes and possessed extraordinary bearings, especially the young man in the lead. He had an almost gorgeous appearance and hair that was partially pure black like the eternal night and partially snow-white like ice. It was coiled into a bun behind his head and just happened to seem like the convergence of yin and yang, causing him to emanate an unusual elegant demeanor. This person was one of the leading figures in the younger generation of the 7 great ancient clans, Zhongli. He was ranked at the 4th position during the first round of the test. Obviously, this group of people were disciples of the Zhongli clan. Big Brother Sun, should we make a move and kill these two people? Someone asked in a low voice while his gaze was filled with killing intent. This barbaric blood lake doesn't belong to us, so what's the point of killing them? Just wait a moment. It won't be long before they'll be eliminated. At that time, it wouldn't be late for us to clear up the cosmos beasts here. Zhongli soon spoke unhurriedly, and his voice was gentle while carrying a unique sense of magnetism, while his bearing was composed and elegant. The other disciples of the Zhongli clan didn't speak any further when they heard this. It was just as Zhongli had said, the two of them would be eliminated soon at any rate, so there was no need for them to make a move themselves. Their only regret was that if those two people were to die at their hands, then perhaps they would be able to obtain some star points. But obviously, Zhongli disdained to obtain these star points, so they didn't speak any further. Seek for help? Didn't you notice that they're disciples of the Zhongli clan? It's already not bad that they aren't attacking us. One of the young men surrounded by the cosmos beasts fought as he spoke swiftly via voice transmission. Liang Ren, concentrate on killing the enemy. We can't be distracted at this moment. Surprisingly, these two people were Liang Ren and Gu Yueming. However, at this moment, both of them were tightly encircled, and they were in an extremely bad situation. Their entire bodies were soaked in dark red blood, and it was a mix of both their own and their enemies. I just feel that it's slightly regretful that we were unable to pass the information to Xianxia. Liang Ren had a serious expression while his voice carried a tone of regret. I thought you felt slightly regretful that you'll be eliminated and wouldn't have the chance to enter Dao Emperor Academy again. Alas, we probably have no chance. Actually, long ago before we participated in the test, I was clearly aware that I only had a very tiny certainty in being able to enter Dao Emperor Academy. So even if I'm eliminated, there wouldn't be much regrets in my heart. You really are a bastard. Since you've come, then give it your best and don't think so much. As for the outcome, can anyone predict it? Why don't I protect you and help you open up a path? In this way, at least one of us will be able to pass the information to Xianxia. Perhaps he might even be able to enter the 3rd round of the test. No! Why? Can you fucking stop dallying, alright? Just do as I said. Otherwise, we'll both be eliminated. Liang Ren suddenly shouted fiercely at Gu Yueming, And then he leaped over and suddenly charged towards the area that was the most densely filled with cosmos beasts. You? Gu Yueming's eyes turned red when he saw this, and they almost split open. You my ass. Quickly get the fuck out of here. Liang Ren roared furiously. His figure had already been drowned within the cosmos beasts, and only his voice could be heard. Gu Yueming gritted his teeth while the veins on his forehead bulged up. He didn't hesitate any longer to turn around and charge to the side. With Liang Ren drawing the attention of the group of cosmos beasts, the pressure he faced had obviously eased up greatly. Unfortunately, it was still impossible to kill his way out of the tight encirclement in a short period of time. But at the very least, his hope of success was much greater, right? I never expected that these two fellows would be rather loyal. The disciples of the Zhongli clan in the distance laughed lightly. What's the use of being loyal? Both of them will probably still be eliminated in the end. Another one of the Zhongli clan disciples said, however, I really respect their choice. If they seek assistance from us, then I'll make an exception and rescue them once. The others smiled as they shook their heads without end upon hearing this, and they seemed to reveal expressions of deep agreement because not to mention loyalty. Even disciples from the same power might fight each other in the Bloodlands. Since I've arrived, then it's impossible for them to seek any help for all of you. However, I thank you, friend, for your good intentions. Right at this moment, a calm and indifferent voice suddenly resounded from extremely far away in the distance, and it drew the attention of all the Zhongli clan disciples. However, it was a wisp of sword chi that appeared within their fields of vision. A wisp of sword chi that was like a gathering of the clouds in the surroundings or a wave of steaming clouds. As they sensed the terrifying crushing force within this wisp of sword chi, the expressions of all the Zhongli clan disciples changed slightly. Only Zhongli Sun's expression remained calm as before, while only his eyes flickered indeterminately and flowed with strands of bright radiance that seemed like bolts of black and white lightning. Bang! The sword chi descended, and then a rain of blood sprayed. The group of around 100+ cosmos beasts didn't even have the chance to let out shrill howls before they were crushed into an expanse of blood and powder. Only Liang Ren and Gu Yueming stood there alone with stunned expressions, and they seemed to have been taken by surprise. The expressions of those disciples of the Zhongli clan changed slightly once more when they saw such a scene, and their expressions revealed a wisp of surprise and bewilderment. This strike was so terrifying that it caused a trace of uneasiness to arise in their hearts. It was at this moment that they saw the person who'd arrived clearly. It was a handsome young man with eyes that were deep like the starry sky, and his bearing was indifferent and extraordinary. He was exactly Chun Shi. However, most of them didn't recognize Chun Shi, and only Zhongli Sun's eyes narrowed before he revealed a wisp of sudden realization because he seemed to have guessed Chun Shi's identity. Chun Shi paid no attention to all of this. He directly arrived by Liang Ren and Gu Yueming's side, and he heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that both of them hadn't suffered any heavy injuries. Then he said with a smile, "Fortunately, I wasn't too late." Up until the moment Chun Shi spoke, Liang Ren and Gu Yueming finally seemed as if they'd awoken from a dream. They glanced at each other before a glow suffused their faces, and they seemed to be feeling happiness from surviving a calamity. Both of them intended to say something, yet Chun Shi immediately waved his hand and said, "Let's leave this place first." As he spoke, his gaze inadvertently glanced towards the disciples of the Zhongli clan in the distance. Liang Ren and Gu Yueming instantly came to an understanding, and they directly flew towards the distance with Chun Shi. From the beginning until the end, they didn't spare a glance at the disciples of the Zhongli clan at all. Big Brother Sun, that fellow is really formidable, yet he's only at the initial stage of the mysterious immortal realm. If we're able to kill him, then we'll probably be able to obtain a great deal of star points. Should we? When they saw Chun Shi and the others leave directly, one of the disciples of the Zhongli clan couldn't help but speak softly via voice transmission. "There's no need to pursue." Zhongli Sun rubbed his chin as he frowned and said, "If I'm not wrong, then that young man is Chun Shi, and he's a ruthless figure. According to the information I obtained, the Wuxia clan secretly instructed many of their pawns in the Bloodlands to kill him, yet they were unable to do anything against him. It's best for us not to interfere in this matter. As the leading figure of the Zhongli clan's younger generation, Zhongli Sun was naturally clearly aware that it wasn't just the Wuxia clan that had placed many pawns in the Bloodlands, and the other top powers had done so as well. Even their Zhongli clan was no exception. This was an unspoken rule, and these pawns were placed for a very simple objective. It was for the sake of guaranteeing that the disciples of the various clans could obtain sufficient star points in the Bloodlands and pass the test smoothly. Of course, pawns could sometimes be of some other uses as well. For example, providing information, assisting in the hunting of their target, and so on and so forth. Xianxia? No wonder. So it was him. The other disciples of the Zhongli clan came to an understanding as well, and they revealed expressions of enlightenment. Because he was ranked at the 9th position during the first round of the test, Xianxia's name had been spread swiftly, and it was known to all. Moreover, along the way to Barbaric Blood Lake, they'd heard a great deal of information about the matter of the Whitetail King leading all his subordinates out. Coupled with the information provided by the pawns of their clan, they were already clearly aware that Xianxia's name was already on the Wuxia clan's hunting list, and they intended to eliminate him. When they heard that young man from before was Xianxia, they discarded the thoughts in their hearts to hunt Xianxia. That was a matter of the Wuxia clans, and their Zhongli clan wouldn't lend a hand. Conversely, their Zhongli clan would only be even more happy if Xianxia was able to hunt a few disciples of the Wuxia clan. Interesting. If Xianxia is able to pass through the 3 tests and successfully enter Dao Emperor Academy, then it would be worth for our Zhongli clan to make friends with him. If he's able to be of use to me, then it would definitely be greatly beneficial to me gaining a foothold in Dao Emperor Academy. Zhongli Sun muttered while seeming to be lost in thought. The other disciples of the Zhongli clan laughed lightly when they heard this. Someone said, "Big Brother Sun, with the reputation of our Zhongli clan and with your personal invitation, wouldn't taking Xianxia be an extremely easy matter?" "Humph. Aren't you thinking a bit too highly of that Xianxia by making Big Brother Sun invite him personally?" "Exactly. That kid offended the Wuxia clan. Perhaps he'll be eliminated in a while. Even if he's lucky enough to survive, if we were to make friends with him and become enemies with the Wuxia clan because of him, then it would be unavoidable for the Wuxia clan to feel displeased. The benefits and disadvantages of this needs to be thought over." The others spoke successively, and they more or less rejected Xianxia. Zhongli Sun glanced at everyone by his side, and was clearly aware that they were actually unwilling to admit Xianxia's superiority. But he didn't expose it and just waved his hand before he said, "We'll discuss this matter later. The important matter at hand is to earn star points." When he spoke up to hear, his expression couldn't help but become serious. "We won't be able to find any cosmos beasts to hunt soon. When there were no more cosmos beasts to hunt, then they would naturally go hunt the other disciples that were participating in the test. Because at that time, even if they didn't hunt others would come hunt them, within a secluded mountain forest." Xianxia, Liang Ran, and Gu Yueming sat cross-legged as they chatted briefly before Chen. She found out the reason that they'd made an appearance at the southeast area of the Bloodlands. They'd actually come specially to look for him. On the other hand, the reason they came looking for him was very simple. It was for the sake of bringing back a piece of information related to the Wuxia clan. "So Wuxia is leading his companions and rushing over here from Blackline Gorge?" said Xianxia. Liang Ren nodded and said, "Originally, the 2 of us weren't completely certain. However, we happened to encounter a lone Wuxia clan disciple on the way here, and we followed him all the way to finally hear him inadvertently reveal some clues. So we rushed over hastily." When he spoke up to hear, Liang Ren couldn't help but smile as he said, "Fortunately, we were able to see you beforehand. Now, we only have to flee quietly, and we won't have to worry about the Wuxia clan succeeding in their plans." The nearby Gu Yueming smiled as well and said, "This is called luck. The Wuxia clan's plan deserves to fail." When he spoke up to hear, he stood up and straightened his clothes before he said, "There's no time to lose. Let's make the best use of our time and leave here." Xianxia shook his head instead and said, "You 2 leave first. I intended to confront the disciples of the Wuxia clan." His expression was calm and revealed a strand of resolution. Liang Ren and Gu Yueming were stunned, and they didn't understand why Chen Shi insisted on taking this risk. Chen Shi stood up as well before he patted them on the shoulder and said with a smile, "They desire to eliminate me from the test. So could it be that I'm not allowed to eliminate them?" Liang Ren said in a worried tone. "But you're all alone. What if you're eliminated? You won't have another chance to enter Dao Emperor Academy. Acting in this way is absolutely more harmful than beneficial, and the losses outweigh the gains." Gu Yueming said seriously, "Liang Ren is right. Even if you intend to take revenge, wait until you've entered Dao Emperor Academy, and it wouldn't be late to make a move then. Why insist on taking a risk at this moment?" Chen Shi knew that they were thinking for his own good when he heard this, but he'd already decided, so he was naturally confident in dealing with all situations he would face. In the end, he refused their good intentions. Liang Ren and Gu Yueming knew they would be unable to persuade Chen Shi, and they both felt slightly helpless. But in the end, they respected Chen Shi's decision. "If I'm not wrong, then almost 300 people have been eliminated by now. Both of you have to take care of yourself. It's best to hide first, and it wouldn't be late to earn star points after the situation is clear. At that time, even if you're killed, you'll still be able to enter the third round of the test." When Chen Shi intended to leave, he instructed the two of them seriously before he left. "Alas, you should think about yourself." Liang Ren sighed. "All right, since you've decided, then work hard to accomplish it. Remember that you must keep yourself safe." Gu Yueming's expression was solemn as he spoke seriously. Chen Shi nodded and laughed light-heartedly before he left swiftly. "I wonder what deep enmity lies between this fellow and the Wuxia clan. He never told us about it, and it's truly infuriating." Liang Ren puckered his lips and muttered with displeasure. "He intends to bear all of this by himself, and he didn't tell us because he's worried that we would be swept into it." Gu Yueming said calmly, "However, we only have to know that there's enmity between him and the Wuxia clan. One day, if he personally heads to the Wuxia clan to seek revenge, then I'll naturally go along with him." Liang Ren nodded silently. Hoksaro Mountain. This was an extremely precipitous mountain that was covered in jagged rocks of grotesque shapes, and it was said that even a hawk would find it difficult to surmount this mountain. Thus it was called Hoksaro Mountain. Coupled with the surroundings of this mountain being covered all year round by balls of black baleful mist that could silently corrode a living being and was extremely poisonous, very few living beings dared reside here. However, no matter how poisonous the baleful mist was, it was completely harmless to immortals. The only troublesome thing was that the existence of the mist greatly affected the detection of immortal sense. After Zhuoqiu Yin's group of 72 arrived at the southeast area of the Bloodlands, they set up camp here. They were waiting for information, and they would move out courageously so long as they obtained certain news and kill the target swiftly like a bolt of lightning. "Big Brother Ian, a pawn of our clan in the Bloodlands, sent information over earlier. The target made an appearance near Barbaric Blood Lake earlier." A disciple of the Zhuoqiu clan walked over hastily and spoke swiftly to Zhuoqiu Yin. "His exact position is unknown for now. However, according to the information, the Zhongli clan had appeared nearby as well, and they ought to have met the target." Zhuoqiu Yin frowned and said, "The Zhongli clan?" After that he asked, "Is our pawn unable to detect his exact position?" That disciple of the Zhuoqiu clan gnashed his teeth and said, "That traitor Whitetail King has vanished without a trace, whereas practically all the cosmos beasts in the southeast area have been eliminated by the target. So it's extremely difficult to obtain more information." This answer caused Zhuoqiu Yin's expression to sink, and a wisp of fury surged into his heart. In his heart, no matter how formidable Whitetail King's strength was, Whitetail King was only a pawn of his Zhuoqiu clan. Now, that fellow had actually dared to flee on his own. He's simply tired of living. He took a deep breath and asked, "If the exact position is impossible to determine, then the direction he left towards from Barbaric Blood Lake ought to be known, right?" That disciple hesitated for a moment before he said in a low voice, "He seems to be heading over here towards Hoksaro Mountain." Hoksaro Mountain? Zhuoqiu Yin was stunned. Isn't that the place that we're camped at now? Because I felt this matter was too strange, so I suspect that the target might have acted in this way on purpose for the sake of deceiving us. Actually, he has probably fled towards other directions a long time ago. The disciple spoke of his guess. Zhuoqiu Yin's eyes narrowed as he muttered, "What if it's true?" That disciple was stunned, and then he laughed indifferently. Wouldn't that be even better? Would it be any different than walking into a trap? I think that it's impossible for him to be so stupid. Swish! Right at this moment, a sharp sound that tore at their eardrums resounded abruptly, and then a hole was suddenly torn open in the baleful mist that enveloped Hawksarrow Mountain before a dazzling cold light shot out from within. This cold light was simply like a wisp of flowing light that came from space. It was unbelievably swift and carried a matchless penetrative force as it caused a strand of a terrifying and shattered pitch-black mark to appear in space from the friction with it. Bang! A clansman of the Zhuoqiu clan that was keeping watch on a cliff didn't even have time to react to what had happened before his throat had been penetrated. The terrifying impact carried his body out over 10 kilometers away before smashing heavily into a rock. In the end, the rock shattered into powder, whereas the clansman of the Zhuoqiu clan transformed into a wisp of violet light that was carried out of the Bloodlands. The entire process seemed to be slow, yet it had actually occurred in an instant. Right when Zhuoqiu Yin and the others noticed the scene and had just turned their heads around, the throat of that clansman had already been penetrated. Quick! Truly too quick. Quick to the point they didn't even have the chance to exclaim in shock, think, or feel fear,